Good morning and welcome to the Church Communications Podcast. My name is Katie Allred, and again with me today is Josh Taylor. Hi, Josh.
Good morning, Katie.
So, this morning we are brought to you by our lovely sponsor, Use Bulletin. Okay, so how many tabs do you have open on your computer right now? I only have one, but maybe you have multiple. All right. So, Bulletin puts all of your communication tasks in a single place. You can create your print bulletins, send really cool mobile bulletins right to people's phones, schedule and post all of your social media, send text message alerts, and more. It will change the way you communicate with your people for the better. You can get started today by going to usebulletin.com. Usebulletin.com. All right, Josh. So today I'm excited because we don't agree on something. And I might change my mind. I've already said that.
I might change my mind,
But
but probably not.
the question today is, should you use a cross as your logo? Okay, so we're gonna just talk about it. All right, let's chat.
Let's talk about it. So obviously, when we create church logos, the first idea that comes to mind is let's put a cross on it. Which I think my disagreement is that's not really creative.
It's not at all.
And everybody else uses it.
Sure.
So
that's okay. So that's where Josh is coming from. Okay, and where I'm coming from is, I mean, one,
Deeper.
Also it's not creative, but also I feel like it's just not the best theologically, because I personally feel like Jesus is not on the cross anymore. He's living.
Right.
And so the open tomb is a better like image for that. However, the open tomb doesn't lend itself to jewelry. So, or a logo. So, except for New Spring, they're actually the one church that uses the open tomb in their logo. Did you know that?
Well, actually, there's a church here that uses it as well. Kind of a
nice.
version. Dayspring Church uses it.
Okay.
Which you look at it, you kind of understand what it is.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So, yeah, I can see that too. I think it would make a really weird looking jewelry. But maybe you could start a business that makes really great looking open tomb necklaces.
Maybe. Now I've given you a business idea, run with it.
But okay, so tell me theologically, what is the issue with the cross?
I don't know. So I first came in and said I feel like it's a graven image, but you said that you don't think that's necessarily true. So why don't you explain that?
So when I look at the graven images, we see this in the Old Testament. We see it in the Ten Commandments and a few other places where God says, "Do not make any graven images before me." I don't think that has anything to do with the cross, because we're not trying to personify who God is with the cross. And so when you look out throughout the Old Testament, you see that gods were being, I guess, deified with graven images. And if we know that God is the creator of the universe, he's creator of all living things in the sky, on the earth, and in the sea. Mm-hmm. And these were the things that pagans were using to personify who their gods were.
Right.
I think God, one, wants to make sure that we're not doing that, because really, and you can't capture the essence of who God is in an image.
Right.
And so I think God wants to make sure that we understand.
But don't you think that some people are trying to capture who God is through just and I feel like that's putting God in a little box. And I'm like, he is more like, he did all of the work on the cross for our sin. I know that.
Right.
I know that the cross is very important to us. But the early church never used the cross as their image. They used a fish.
Yeah, they used an ichthus. They would draw half of it, and
because the cross was a scary, excruciating, painful way to die. It's not like you're going around with a noose, necklace.
Yeah. And that would be the equivalent to it today, as if we were walking around with a noose or guillotine around our neck.
Right, like that's or electrical chair or something. It's just that's not what we do. You don't want to humanize death, and I don't know.
But the difference is that Jesus didn't have his head cut off for the forgiveness of sins, nor was he electrocuted.
Right.
Or anything like that. And so the cross
is special. I get that.
It is a different form of to me, Jesus redeemed what the cross
was. Right. Yes. I agree. I just also, let's go back to creativity. Okay. So let's go back to, is this the best way to communicate who our church is and what it does?
If your name is Crosspoint, maybe.
Maybe. That's easy. Done. All right.
Other than that, we could probably get more creative in personifying the personality of our church.
Right. And that goes back again to the mission and vision and core values of your church, which is something we talked about a little bit last week. So if your mission and vision, core values is, you want to connect people to Jesus through community or whatever, there might be a better way to symbolize that. So what let's read some comments that we're getting. Okay.
Don't let the United Methodist Church see this.
Yeah, the United Methodist Church with the cross and flame. Although I will say there is something about historical significance.
Mm-hmm.
So like they've been using that for a long time.
Right.
And so for me, I'm like, well, that is, first off, they have brand equity.
Yeah.
Right. So they have brand equity.
The Catholic Church has been using the crucifix.
The Catholic Church
still has Jesus on the cross.
Right, which is,
he's
not
there
there
been doing
anymore
that for a long time.
But that's fine. But yeah, we get it. Like there's brand equity in those things.
So we had people come into our church when I was on staff at a church here in town. We didn't have any crosses anywhere. So like usually you walk into a church worship service and there's like a huge lit up cross in the baptistry or something like that.
Right.
And we didn't have that. And there were people that would actually come in and visit our church and be like, I can't believe y'all don't have a cross anywhere.
Yeah.
Or an American flag.
Yeah. I can see where that can be a problem too.
And the reality is what to me it becomes at that point is an issue of legalism, and it becomes an issue of what are we worshiping?
Right.
And so if the cross is a stumbling block for people to get beyond what is the reality of the cross itself is not special. What happened on the cross is special.
Right.
Which personifies God's ultimate act of love for us. It personifies
But they could have done it with anything.
God could have done it with anything, but Jesus even points throughout the New Testament to the cross.
Right.
Taking up our cross, bearing our cross, and points to his crucifixion. Right. And so it was an ultimate act of punishment that the Romans didn't invent, but they really perfected it.
Right.
To make it to where you were clinging on to life as long as possible, ultimate torture.
Right.
And so my issue with the cross is not that we shouldn't have them or use them, but we should be very intentional on how we do it, and reminding people what happened at the cross, and reminding people what the cross personifies, and what it really personifies is the sacrifice that God did for us. Yeah.
And if your mission and vision is that, maybe the cross is the best logo for you.
It could be, yeah. But I think you should talk about it if it is.
Yeah,
and not just have a cross thrown up there. Remind people what the cross is.
Don't just throw the cross on everything and think, oh, well, now people know this is Christian.
Right.
I feel like we like to put our Christianity in a nice little box and just try to sell it to people, and that's not exactly what Jesus wanted us to do. He wanted us to create relationships and figure out ways that we can, can we make our brand relational and not just so generic that people automatically assume that we're Christian just because there's a cross on it. I think a lot of people probably use the cross because there are other churches, right? And these other churches may be not Christian.
Yeah.
Right.
It's also, it's interesting if you look at the military, how do you identify the chaplains, the Christian chaplains?
Right.
The cross.
So
there are uses of it that I'm fine with. And again, it goes back to what are we talking about? What are we reminding people of? And I think that that's really a great way to bring our church back to, even if it's in our logo, say, here's why we use it in our logo.
Right.
Is because this is what it means to us.
Right.
We're not worshiping the cross itself. And sometimes we see the cross so much that it loses its significance.
Right. And that's something I think that was my next biggest problem was that we overuse it, and that people use it obviously in fashion now. It's on t-shirts, it's on people get it tattooed on them. So it's like literally wearing your heart on your sleeve. Yeah. Like that, like if you're putting a cross on your arm, you're literally putting your heart on your sleeve. Like that is, if Jesus lives inside of you, you're literally putting it right there so everybody can see it, which is great, I guess. But also, what if you're doing something that, Jesus wouldn't necessarily.
Well, it goes back to the idea of the graven images, because I look at the 10 Commandments, and I think that God meant for them to be deeper than what we often look at them at, because we look at the first 5 or the first 4, and we see really our relationship to God and then our relationship to people. And that's really how you can sum up that's how Jesus summed up the 10 Commandments. And so it's the same as not taking the Lord's name in vain. Like, I don't think that God said, don't use images of the cross, don't murder, and don't say, oh my God.
Right.
Because even as we say, don't take God's name in vain, it's not necessarily not say, oh my God. It means don't bear my name and then misrepresent who I am to the world.
Like the name of God is special.
Right.
And it should be above all things. And that's exactly how I feel about the cross too. Like the cross is special.
Mm-hmm.
Like it really meant something. So if we're just printing it on our business cards, it's still just as special. And it could be. I don't want to like take away. Like I think sometimes like having it as your logo does have significance if it ties back to your mission and your vision. I mean, obviously the cross has done all those things in your church. I get that, and for you as a person. But I just also want to make sure that we are using it in a way that is gives it the glory that it deserves.
Absolutely, and I think I couldn't disagree with you on that, because again, what are we communicating, and what are we using so much that it really does lose its value. I was preaching at a Presbyterian church this last week, and the conversation that I had with one of the worship leaders, because there's a lot of liturgy in a lot of Presbyterian churches, which is awesome and it's beautiful and I love it. But one of the things that she said to me was, sometimes we do this so much that it just becomes words.
Yeah.
And sometimes we see the cross so much that it just becomes a symbol,
right?
And it loses its value. And so, and it may, in our churches, it may not just be the cross. We really need to evaluate everything that we're doing, whether it's the sacraments, the communion, whatever it is, and what is losing its value because we're making it so repetitious.
Right.
And I'm not saying stop doing communion every week if that's what you do, but remind people why we do it. Make it significant every single week if you're going to do it every week.
Right. Okay. Well,
so if you disagree with me or with Katie, you can put it in the comments.
And and so like I don't think this has a definitive yes or no, although I did put a yes or no on it. I don't think there's a yes, this should be our logo, or no, it should not be our logo. I think that you just have to weigh it carefully before you decide that you're going to use it. Don't just use it because everybody else is using it. I think, we just have to, like I said, give it special priority and significance and understanding how we're using it, where you're using it. I mean, if you put, we use our logo on everything, right? We put on pens and so many swag items. I don't want it to lose its significance or what it is, the glory of it.
Yeah.
So
if the cross is your logo, maybe this is a great opportunity for you to write a blog post or something like that to let folks in your church know, here's why the cross is our logo.
Right.
Because it could point people back to, because again, I think it's something.
Or if you just randomly stuck one in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Maybe, a lot of people do that. They'll be like, here's some mountains, but also there's a cross on the mountain or something. Like, I mean, that's good. Let's understand and maybe break that down for people and let them really fully understand what the brand is.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that's great. So if you use the cross, or if you're thinking about creating a logo and the cross is an option, try to get really creative and say, okay, does this really personify the personality of our church? What are we trying to communicate by using a cross? Are we just saying that we're Christian? Is there a better way to do this and make the cross more significant in what we're doing as a church?
Right. Okay. Well, if you have any questions, feel free to always leave those for us down in the comments. And if you're listening to this via podcast, feel free to come join the Church Communications Facebook group. Go like our page. You can subscribe to this on iTunes. We're basically everywhere other things are. So, or other things. churchcommunications.com. You can visit us there. And thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it.